Now, I don't know if any of you saw this article through the week. I didn't catch which newspaper it came from. I received it from a lady whose name is Rebecca, and she's a faithful follower of our ministry, and sent this newspaper article to you. I want to go through it with you, and I want to do it fairly quick because I've got another thing I want to talk about as well. The article reads, as you can see, Christians take note. Queensland Education Department joins the growing list of persecutors of the faith. This is an article by Andrew Bolt. He is not a Christian. He's an agnostic. But one thing about Andrew Bolt, this is what I like in this relate. I haven't really watched much Andrew Bolt, so I don't know a lot about all the other stuff he talks about. But in relation to Christianity, he's very rational in the sense he acknowledges the good influence that Christians have in a community. He's not just judging them because he doesn't like that they believe in God and they believe in Jesus. He just sees the good influence, that it's a good religion that's done nothing but good, civilizing things to the world. And as you listen to this article and as you listen to a short video that I've got at the end of this, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. But remember, this man's an agnostic, is not a Christian, and I'm seeing something taking place that I think Christians in general don't realise is actually happening, or are not prepared to do anything about. Let's read this together. It says, Christians, prepare for persecution. Did you hear that? Christians, prepare for persecution. Open your eyes and choose stronger leaders for the dark days. He sees dark days ahead, and he's saying, open your eyes and choose stronger leaders for the dark days that are coming quite quickly. I am not a Christian, but I am amazed that your bishops and ministers are not warning you of what is already breaking over your heads. How mad that Queensland's Education Department can now warn schools against letting students praise Jesus in the playground. This is happening in Australia. This is not America. You expect things like this to happen in America. You expect it to happen in other countries, but you don't expect it to happen in Australia. The department has put out reports telling state schools to take appropriate action if aware that students participating in religious instruction are evangelising to students who do not participate. So anyone who speaks about Jesus in the playground. It gives examples of what students must not say in the playground, like knowing about Jesus is a very important thing, or God, please help us to use our knowledge to help others. Real simple little statements that an innocent child who believes in God, believes in Jesus, would say. Nor may students hand out Christmas cards or decorations. What do these bureaucrats fear from children inspired by Christ? What harm are those children bringing? They tolerate bullying in schools. We know in our schools they tolerate bullying, but they won't tolerate a Christian child who's telling someone about Jesus, or just gives them a Christmas card with a nativity scene on it. You know, that means we're trying to evangelise, we're trying to convert them. Is it that stuff about loving your neighbour? Is that what they've got against us, that we should love our neighbour? Or that instruction to respect the dignity of every human life that makes Christians the enemy of totalitarianism? Is it all the nice things we do, that we should love our enemy, that we should do good to those that harm us? Is that what they've got against us? You know, I don't see Christians strapping bombs to themselves and getting on buses and blowing them up. Have we heard of any reports of that? Anyone? I remember there was one report of a man who did a pretty bad thing. I can't remember, it was in Germany or something like that. And they said a Christian does this terrible thing, shoots all these people. They find out he wasn't a Christian, he was a Freemason. They mixed the two. But the first report is what people believe, isn't it? Because most of the other people, they don't want to know, oh, he's just a Freemason. Oh, well, Christians are Freemasons. No, Freemasonry is the occult. That's not Christianity. If you're a Freemason and you're a Christian, it's like you're oil and water. It won't, nothing but salt water is going to bubble up. But this ban on playground talk of Jesus is only the most shocking salvo, and salvo means a simultaneous discharge of artillery and other guns in battle. So it's basically discharging, against, it's like a rising up against Christians. Last week, 2 Christian preachers were summoned to Tasmania's Anti-Discrimination Tribunal for preaching their faith stand on traditional marriage and homosexuality. Where's freedom of speech gone? Where's that? We don't have freedom of speech anymore. You either go with what the culture is pushing, and if you speak against it, you get slandered big time. If we say we don't believe in homosexual marriage, you're not allowed to say that anymore. You will go to court for that eventually. That's wrong. Why can't we have an opinion? If they can have an opinion that it's fine, we can have an opinion that it's not fine. What's happening here? You see what I'm sort of getting at? I'm sure you all understand it. Hobart pastor Campbell Markham and street preacher David G. from Hobart's Cornerstone Church were denounced by an atheist offended by, among other things, Markham quoting a verse from the Bible. Can you believe that? He quoted a verse from the Bible and he was summoned to court. Quoted a scripture. So, the witnessing team, we better be careful because we could, you could get into big trouble the way it's going. Has this happened in other countries? Yes. Has it happened that where Christians are rounded up and thrown into prison? Yeah. How did it start? It started with little things like this. Little things just coming in. You can't talk about that anymore. You can't talk about that anymore. I put up a video during the week and I did it, one second, I had a bit of a rant, so I took it down because I felt like I ranted rather than spoke, credibly about it. And but one thing I said is, if they want to shut up the Christians, then atheists should shut up too. Why are they allowed to push their godless, ideology? Why can they say it? Why? And if we're not allowed to preach creation in school, then they shouldn't preach evolution in school. But you know what? The Christians aren't standing up and fighting for this. Margaret Court, she stood up, and all she said was, I don't agree with homosexual marriage, and man, was she slandered. 20 years ago, would that have happened? 20 years ago, if you said, I don't believe in homosexual marriage, most people go, well, neither do I. It's crazy to think that 2 men should marry. But now, the prevailing mindset is everyone believes it's fine. And anyone who doesn't believe, now they've got so great a numbers that now they can actually use that against us. And it's dangerous. Bill, you were going to say something?
I was just going to say on the, when he said a scripture that he had to go to court, but in court, don't you have to put your hand on the Bible?
Yeah. For God so loved the world. Should say that, yeah. That's true. Well, you don't have to. You have the option these days. But it used to be that you'd swear on the Bible. Everyone had to. Now, I'll read a little bit further. We've seen this before. Hobart's Catholic Archbishop Julian Porteous was ordered by this tribunal 2 years ago to tell by what right he spoke against same-sex marriage. By what right? Our rights. We have rights to speak against it. It's in our constitution, I'm sure. None of us know our constitution in Australia. It's all America. They all know it. But we have freedom of speech. We have a right to an opinion. If we don't agree with it, and they've got to remember one thing, this is a completely new thing. They can't bring a new thing in and then order everybody not to have a differing opinion of a new thing. Surely it's got to be put up there for consideration. Is it right or is it wrong? Do you know what I'm saying? It's new. Hasn't been around. That's why it's not in, because it's not been in before, so it's getting pushed in, and now they're trying to squash everybody who resists it. How cowed the churches have been before this looming persecution, now picking off vocal Christians one by one. Just this year, Sydney's University Student Union threatened to deregister the university's evangelical union unless it stopped insisting members declare their faith in Christ. It's trying to shut down Christian unions in universities. Meanwhile, same-sex marriage extremists bullied Cooper's Brewery into talking down a video of Christian MP Andrew Hastie debating same-sex marriage and lobbied IBM, PwC and Sydney University to punish staff belonging to a Christian group opposing to gay marriage. Punish staff opposing it. Last week, 70 pro-safe schools activists picketed a church to abuse people at an Australian Christian lobby meeting as bigots. As bigots. Last year, an ACL meeting was cancelled after the hotel venue was bombarded with threats. The state-funded SBS joined in by banning an ad by Christians defending traditional marriage, yet ran one for the Ashley Madison dating service for adulterers. How's that? They're encouraging adultery. Who's seen that ad on TV? Has anyone ever seen it? It's up. It's late at night, Matthew. You would never have seen it.
No.
And it's not on before 8:30.
I'm too busy in prayer, obviously.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's SBS for a start.
Yeah. Anyway, there's this guy and he's singing this song. I can't remember what it was, but something like that he wants to...
Tonight I'm going out with someone other than my wife.
Yeah, going out with someone other than my wife. And it's this stupid song.
I'm looking for someone other than my wife. Other than my wife. Ashley Madison's right. I'm looking for someone other than my wife. Other than my wife. Ashley Madison's right. I'm looking for someone other than my wife. Other than my wife. Ashley Madison's right.
And it's this stupid song. And he's going out with someone. But if the whole service is married people sleeping together, not with each other, with other married people. Where's the world going? Do you know, I was just reading some works by Ian Bounds, and he said if a generation or two stops praying, we allow this sort of flood of dissipation to come into a world. Past generations have not been faithful in prayer because we're seeing this slow decline in our culture. And everyone is for it. You know, rather than weep that there's a service out there promoting adultery, we chuckle. Is that right? We chuckle because it's so ridiculous, it's funny, but it's not funny because it's ruining marriages everywhere. Adultery destroys marriages. And what do you think Satan wants to do? If you destroy the marriages, you destroy families. And if you destroy families, you destroy humanity eventually. Amen? And we've all been attacked. We've all been attacked. The Greens, the most atheist of all the political parties in Australia, the Greens are the political wing of this attack on Christianity and are demanding churches lose their legal freedom to hire only people who live by their faith. So what they're trying to do is the Greens, who are supposed to be worried about the trees, are demanding churches who hire staff that they must not discriminate between Christian and non-Christian. Like for a start, if you're a non-Christian, what do you want to go and work in a church for? And isn't it our right to choose who we believe is the right person for the job? Why are they trying to dictate who the right person for the job is? You know? Hey, if the church hires a gardener and a non-Christian gardener is the better man for the job, sure, he should get it. But if you hire a deacon, you'd expect him to be Christian, wouldn't you? Or you hire a counsellor, you'd expect him or her to be Christian. And it should be within our rights to choose, especially if the church is going to be paying for that person. It should not be dictated to us by the Greens. The media too often cheer this war, using as their excuse the sexual abuse of children by some priests and ministers decades ago. They keep bringing up the sexual abuse, the pedophilia that happened so long ago. You know, sure, there's unfaithful ministers out there, right? But what about how many unfaithful non-Christians are there out there? Statistics show far worse than Christian unfaithfulness. So rarely do they admit the average gap between the alleged offences by Catholic priests and the lodging of complaints is 33 years. That suggests the churches did crack down on pedophiles decades ago. But this vilification has had its effect. The census shows the proportion of Australians calling themselves Christians have dropped from 74% in 1991 to 52% now. No wonder when the weaker churches cower before the persecution. Last week, some even licked the boots of the anti-Christian ABC when it launched yet another attack, smearing churches as the haven of wife beaters. Did you get that? You know, the ABC is very aware that if they go and say something, a bit of disinformation, and the difference between misinformation and disinformation is misinformation is you honestly got it wrong. Disinformation is where you deliberately get it wrong. They know if you deliberately say something that's wrong, a statistic, and announce it in the wrong way and lead people to believe a certain thing, the initial report will reach millions of people who will swallow it completely, right? And then when it's corrected, like Andrew Bolt came along and corrected this report, right? It's too late. The people have been affected. The damage has been done. You try to fix it after that, and people, it doesn't change the fact that they're emotionally been changed inside. Now they hate Christians even more. Does that make sense? A week after I proved this untrue, the ABC's edited its report to replace the false claim with another. Overall, the international studies indicate that intimate partner violence is just as serious a problem in Christian communities as it is in the general community. And Bolt says that's wrong again. So they're trying to say that Christians are wife beaters. Christian males are wife beaters. Wrong again. Professor Bradford Wilcox, author of the American study of the ABC, cited as proof, complained the ABC story does not square with the evidence that the church-going couples in America at least appear to be less likely to suffer domestic violence. They say the actual report that they were quoting, the actual thing they were supposed to say was that men that go to church regularly, less than 2% become wife beaters. If they were wife beaters, they stopped beating their wives. It has a positive influence. But the ABC twisted the report. Now, what you've got to understand is, okay, we know this now, but the fact is, this is what people are starting to think of us. This is the prevailing thought that's getting pushed. They're projecting it in every way they can, and the ABC is leading the way in it. So I'm just going to play one report. This is by Andrew Bolt. And remember, he's not a Christian, but I have to say, I think God's raised up the perfect man at this stage, but there's got to be some Christians that raise up. Amen? There's got to be some Christians that are going to have the sort of influence that someone like Andrew Bolt has, and that are prepared to just take it to him. Because this is worrying. You know, how quick, when the homosexual agenda began, within 20 years it's now acceptable, and they're getting married, and now they've got this marriage equality or same-sex thing, and you can choose to be a man one day and a woman the next day, and we have no right to say anything else. You know, a child that came to, was learning in Vina's class, grade 1, said that the mother took this child out of the school that the child was going to because, you know, the woman, was it a woman or a man?
I'm not sure.
We don't know now, see?
I'm confused. Yeah.
No, I think it was a man. I think when you originally said it.
Mr. someone.
Mr. someone, or I think his name was, just say his name was Steve. We don't know what his name is. Steve shows up and everyone knows he's a man that day, but the next day he shows up dressed as a woman. And they had to address him with a woman's name. And when the mother found out, she was beside herself and took the kids, immediately took the child out of the school, because if the principal's not going to crack down on that, and the principal won't, because the heat that will come on that principal for trying to crack down on that. Right? This is not right, guys. This is the world going insane. You know, I can solve the whole dilemma. If you're born a man, you're a man. If you're born a woman, you're a woman. End of story. How stupid are we to think anything else? How stupid are we? You know, a man who gets a sex change is still a man. A woman who gets a sex change is still a woman. Come on, man. What are the professors doing? Why aren't the professors teaching this? Why aren't the biology teachers teaching this? Surely they're smart enough. They don't believe in God, so they're obviously not smart enough, but come on. It gets up my goat that the world is so stupid, accepting such stupid things. And we need to do something about it. This should be cause for prayer. This should get us to our knees. This should make us vigilant. This should make us the most powerful force in the whole world as a church. This should cause the church to rise up and become all that she's meant to be. Pray like there's no tomorrow, because if we just let it slide, it's going to get worse and worse. And mark my words, there will come a time that if you want to meet in this church, we will not be able to meet here. We'll have to meet in secret. And if we want to evangelize someone, we'll have to do that evangelism in secret. And if we want to do anything, our videos will be pulled down. YouTube will ban Christian videos. Muslims will be fine. The Muslims will be fine. They'll go and still pray there 5 times a day. The schools will, we've got prayers to do. Go and get into them. But the Christians, no. And if I speak like this, I'll get thrown into prison. And one day you'll be visiting me in prison. And when you visit me, and guess what? You'll be pulled into prison too. Because and this is happening overseas. Let's not think Rob's just being fictitious here. This is happening right now overseas. And do you know the Word of God says this is going to happen over the whole earth. And we're seeing it. And Andrew Bolt, God's using in this thing. I don't know much about his whole, what he stands for in other areas. But in this one thing, he says it better than the Christians at the moment.
In fact, Christianity produces better citizens in many ways. Surveys show Christians are more inclined to volunteer, donate, and keep families together. So what do the enemies of Christianity wish to achieve by smearing, silencing, and destroying this civilizing faith? What would they replace it with? With the atheism that preaches every man for himself? With Islam? Or with the green faith that has not inspired a single hospital, hospice, school, or even a soup kitchen? Yet the persecution is starting. Are the churches ready?
I'll just play this for you.
The ABC's war on Christians is becoming hysterical, as well as factually inaccurate. It seems suspicious, as I said earlier this week, that the ABC is stepping up its war on Christianity, just as Cardinal George Pell is about to face court over allegations of historic sexual offences. And you would be right if you also thought the ABC was in fact at war against the religion that is actually a civilising influence. I should point out I am agnostic. Last night, the ABC's 7:30 program made this obviously false claim, in fact an absurdly false claim.
We talk about women in Islam, but statistically it's evangelical Christian men who attend church sporadically who are the most likely to assault their wives.
That claim was based on the work of ABC presenter Julia Baird, who made the same claim earlier on ABC Radio.
The men most likely of any men, not religious or non-religious, to assault their wives are evangelical men who go to church sporadically.
So why are these evangelical Christians supposedly most likely to punch their wives? Well, according to Baird, the ABC presenter, it's because the Bible teaches women to submit to their husbands, and because so many churches are led by men.
The church calls it male headship, that a woman must submit to her husband as set out in the scriptures, that headship is more about control than biblical truth, and is even used as a licence for violence.
Now, to anyone remotely familiar with the Christian Bible, none of this makes sense. If a man really does follow the teachings of Christ, he will know that Christ preached non-violence. He will know Christ famously stopped the stoning of a woman for adultery. And to anyone remotely familiar with the links between religion and violence, again, the ABC's claims do not make sense. After all, the Christian Bible preaches non-violence, but the Muslim Quran, that actually tells men they can beat their disobedient wives. And in fact, the Hizb ut-Tahrir video this year demonstrated the kindest way that Muslim men could do that beating. And finally, to anyone remotely familiar with Australia, The ABC's claims are a sick joke. It is not evangelical families that suffer from the worst domestic violence. It is Aboriginal families. Aboriginal women are at least 32 times more likely to be put in hospital by their violent partners. So I was so surprised, so amazed by these ABC claims that I did what ABC reporters clearly did not. I checked the source for Julia Baird's claim that evangelical Christians who go to church sporadically are the worst wife beaters. And I found that Baird gave just one source, a single source, Stephen Tracy, a theology professor at a seminary in Arizona. But then when I checked Tracy's essay and the sources he gave, I instead found this, a survey which concluded that religious involvement, specifically attendance at a Christian church, actually protected women from domestic violence. In other words, the more Christian that men were, the more that they went to church, the less likely they were to beat their wives. That is exactly the opposite impression you'd have got from the ABC 7:30 last night. It gets worse. Even more amazingly, that single source that Baird gave for her claim, this Professor Tracy, he actually quoted in that essay another survey from our New Zealand neighbours, a survey that Baird ignored, which may not surprise you, because this is what it showed. 2.2% of men who went to church regularly were violent to their wives. Men who only sometimes went to church were nearly 3 times more likely to beat their wives, 6.2% in all. And men who never went to church, they were the worst by far, 11.2% likely to beat their wives. That is the real story. The more Christian that men are, the more often they go to those churches run by men, the less likely they are to hit their wives. Christianity really does save women in particular. Why didn't the ABC report that? Why did it instead attack Christianity yet again? But most importantly, for us non-Christians, why did it attack the faith that truly does make people more civil? Last night, something amazing. One ABC presenter at least admitted the truth, that the ABC had kicked off its latest campaign against Christianity with a complete falsehood. This falsehood, which the ABC repeated on television, radio and on the internet.
We talk about women in Islam, but statistically it's evangelical Christian men who attend church sporadically who are the most likely to assault their wives.
The men most likely of any men, not religious or non-religious, to assault their wives are evangelical men who go to church sporadically.
Now, as I pointed out last week, this claim is false. Statistically, Aboriginal men are far and away more likely to bash their partners, and also showed that the ABC reporter produced this false claim. ABC presenter Julia Baird had ignored New Zealand evidence that men who didn't go to church at all were worse wife beaters by far. Moreover, I showed that Baird's main source was a survey taken a quarter of a century ago in the United States, and the author of that study, Professor Bradford Wilcox, has since complained that his US findings can't be generalised to apply to Australia, and he said that his most important conclusion was that Christians, real Christians, the ones that go to church, are less likely to abuse women. The more often that men go to church, the less likely they are to beat their wives. But the ABC has defended Baird and dismissed my evidence that she's wrong as, quote, just quibbling over footnotes. quibbling over footnotes. I had in fact disproved the central claim the ABC used to justify a series of articles which falsely implied that Christianity produced more wife-beaters, when the truth is that Christianity produces fewer wife-beaters. Well, last night the ABC's Media Watch grudgingly admitted I was right. Oh, sorry, I had a point.
That is, the more you go to church, the less likely you are to bash your partner, which is a conclusion several other US and New Zealand studies have come to. So when Andrew Bolt says...
That is exactly the opposite impression you'd have got from the ABC 7:30 last night.
He has a point.
Very generous of him.
Is Andrew Bolt speaking up for the Christians? You know, how well did he state what he just stated? How well did he just shatter his opponents? He's got a point. That's all they could come up with. But the damage is already done, because if these people that saw it just say, you know, 1 or 2 million people saw that, that's what they now believe. And they didn't see Andrew Bolt's rebuttal, so they got away with it. Do you know what I'm saying? Which is why I'm doing this today, because, you know, if this sermon can go online and reach a few people and hopefully set a few people straight, you know, Christians are less likely to beat their wives if they go to church regularly. Less likely.